Hi everyone, this is Manny Varela, Business Relationship Manager of the DevOps Institute. Welcome to DevOps Leader, Ask the Author with Mustafa Kapadia and Jayne Groll. The new DevOps Leader course is part of the DevOps Practitioner series of courses and will provide individuals with the practical knowledge needed to become effective and successful in their cultural transformation efforts. To assist Mustafa and Jayne in understanding the demographics of today's audience, we've compiled a few questions for a quick poll. So if you could please participate, I would appreciate that. And let's see if we can launch the first of the questions here. How would you describe your current role? Senior manager, middle manager, practitioner, consultant? And I'll allow for about 10 seconds here to answer the questions. All right, and we'll finish this off in 3, 2, 1. And we'll close that one. And that is the results there, Jayne and Mustafa. We got, looks like consultants predominantly in the audience at the moment, with senior manager, practitioner, and then middle manager rounding off the bunch here. So we'll move forward. That's interesting there. We'll move forward to the next polling question. What sort of leadership training have you had in the past? Formal training, on-the-job training, no training? About 5 more seconds here. And we'll close in 3, 2, 1. So looks like we have about 50% almost there in formal training, with on-the-job and no training rounding off the 3. It's good, interesting. And we'll move on to the final polling question for today. How mature is your organization's DevOps adoption? Haven't started yet, preparing to get started, underway, mature, and improving. All right, we'll allow for about 5 more seconds here. All right, and we'll end it in 3, 2, 1. And it looks like many of you are preparing to get started and underway, with mature and improving and haven't started rounding up the bunch. So thank you very much for those polls, and I hope that was enlightening to Mustafa and to Jayne. So thank you for participating in the poll. We planned for some time at the end of the presentation to answer some questions from those in attendance. So please use the questions box in your GoToWebinar app menu to submit your questions. And so now to move forward with the presentation, I introduce you to Jayne Groll, CEO of the DevOps Institute. Hi, Jayne.
Hi, Manny. Hi, everyone. And thank you all for taking some time with Mustafa and I today to learn a little bit more about the DevOps Institute's new DevOps Leader course and to talk more about what is DevOps leadership. So what we're going to do today is we're first going to invite Mustafa to tell us more about what it takes to be a DevOps leader and some of the visioning that went into the development of this course, some of his experiences with successful leadership of DevOps programs and initiatives. And then I'm going to tell you a little bit about the course itself, the certification exam that accompanies the course, some of the process that sits behind DevOps Institute's release of new courses. But most importantly, what we want to do today is give you an opportunity to ask Mustafa questions about his experiences, questions about the course and the course development and some of the contents of the course. I'll ask Mustafa a few, but again, we really want to encourage you to take this opportunity to be able to have access to the author of this very, very important course. So for those of you who are not familiar with the DevOps Institute, we are the global learning community around emerging DevOps practices, including DevOps leadership. We were launched in 2015, and we do provide training content and certification exams to a worldwide channel of global registered education partners who deliver it directly to the learning community. We do the certification exams in partnership with PeopleCert, and very proud that they are a global leader in IT examination and certification. A little bit, hang on for a second, there we go. And a little bit about Mustafa Kapadia, our DevOps Leader author. I've had the privilege of knowing Mustafa for several years, and he comes with a wealth of experience as service line leader for IBM's digital transformation practice. He also was a very big participant in IBM's internal transformation and is well respected and well known in the DevOps space as a thought leader. And we're so delighted and so proud to have worked with Mustafa on building this course. And before I introduce you to Mustafa, I actually want to share a little bit of a story. So when DevOps Institute first conceived the idea of a DevOps leadership course, recognizing that cultural transformation is a critical success factor for DevOps, the scope of the curriculum really matched a lot of very traditional leadership approaches. So when we start to do the scoping exercise for what this course would cover, you know, it covered very, very traditional leadership skills like communication and overcoming conflict, and again, very well proven, very sound principles in leadership. And again, nothing wrong with those principles. What Mustafa came back with, though, and what's embedded into this course is very unique and very specific to leading DevOps. So outside of other available leadership training, this is a very fresh and innovative and modern approach to adapting and adopting cultural transformation through DevOps. So very, very excited by the content of this course, really excited that Mustafa really thought outside the box based on his wealth of experience and his thought leadership to bring us something that is truly unique. And truly specific to DevOps transformation. So with that, I would like to introduce you to Mustafa. Hi, Mustafa.
Good morning, folks. How are you, Jayne?
Good, good. Tell us a little bit more about DevOps leadership and your experience in working with DevOps leaders.
Perfect. First of all, thank you for the kind words. That's very nice of you. By the way, you know what you've done, right? You've set the bar so high, set the expectations so high, that now I have to live up to it. So now I have to actually work harder. So thanks, but no thanks. But guys, thank you for joining the webinar. I'm glad you can join us. You know, when Jayne and I were talking about the course, you know, we really wanted to make it, like Jayne said, something different and unique. We wanted to make it practical for something that you can actually take in your current job or in new opportunities and really make an impact. And the goal was, of course, to help people who are interested in implementing DevOps. I mean, that's table stakes, so to speak. But the other one was that, you know, it really is to help you guys take a different look or a different way of looking at IT. You know, we've all kind of grown up in this IT in which cost and quality have been the key parameters of success. And everything that we do has always had that lens. But DevOps and Agile and Cloud are forcing us to take a look at it from a different perspective. And we've tried to embed that into this course and show you a different way of looking at IT. Everybody talks about DevOps as a different mindset. Well, there's a big part of that different mindset embedded in it, which is what we call a value stream mapping. And that is a huge part of that course. The other part of it is also to help you, equip you with various frameworks and org constructs and methodologies and principles. Because we wanted to make it, again, practical, because we are now operating in a new operating model, so to speak, the new normal. So we wanted to share with you what are those different frameworks that you can then use to become successful. And everybody thinks that DevOps has one flavor. It's all about speed, but speed depends on your organization. What speed is right for you is different. So we wanted to give you guys design principles in which then you can then take and customize to the organization for the speed that's just right for you. And then last but not least is help you figure out how to manage that change. Right? So we wanted to come to you from a point of view and say, we want to give you a set of tools. We want to show you a different way of thinking. We want to give you the right frameworks. We want to show you how you can actually manage that change. And the goal was to really focus on how to make you successful where you guys are. And as Jayne mentioned, a lot of what you see in this course is based on my experience with leading our DevOps practice at IBM. You know, when I took over for DevOps practice in IBM, it was me and about 4 other guys. And we built the practice from 4 to about 50 to 60 practitioners. In that time, we've helped probably over 100 plus clients in this transformation. And a lot of those takeaways are in this course. In addition to that, I also sit on the council in which we do internal DevOps transformation at IBM. And embedded, and so the learnings from there are there too, because IBM does, given its size, its geography, its number of people, they have different challenges, so some of that is embedded in here. And then last but not least, as Jayne mentioned, I'm also part of a thought leadership team I'm also part of a think tank that is run by Jayne Kim. Actually, I'm one of the founding members. So a lot of the papers that are published by Jayne Kim, some of that content is in here as well. So I'm really looking forward to introducing this course, teaching this course, so that you guys can be successful. Can we go to the next slide, please? And one of the things we want to talk about is why do this, right? The DevOps is really a new operating model, and because it's a new operating model, leaders must be proficient in managing that operating model. And this is just one example. In fact, this is one of the key tenets of our course, is that it really is managing things differently. It's how you do planning organization differently. It's how you manage performance and culture differently. It's what different metrics you use. And I'm not going to go through all of this slides, but I just want to give you an example. So we in IT are really well at planning big things. But DevOps really requires you to plan small, micro releases. That's a big mind change. And so how do you go from planning big things to small things? So to give you an example, if you are building a car, that's a big release, so to speak. Does a micro release mean that you just deliver one wheel at a time? Or does a micro release mean that you develop a skateboard first, then you get into a bicycle, then you develop a scooter, and then finally a car? Because each one of those has a different point of view of how you do releases. The other piece of this is, we spend a lot of time scheduling, because that is how we've grown up. And we use scheduling as a way for control. So everything is centralized, everything's planned, but how do you operate in a decentralized and continuous method? So we're hoping that we can bring all of those things to you in the course. And I don't want to give too much away. I know Jayne is, we want to spend a lot of time on Q&A. So let me give it back to Jayne, and she's going to give you a bit more on the details of the course.
Thanks, Mustafa. Yep, I've got it. Thank you. So, one of the things that have become really important about this course is to understand that, you know, again, everything that Mustafa just described, and hopefully that's just a little bit of a taste of what you would get from this course, is, you know, obviously something that we want to embrace and we want to optimize going forward. So the course was designed as a 16-hour course, so could be delivered over 2 days, could be delivered virtually, depending on the registered education partner that would deliver it. But it is scoped to be a 16-hour course. It is very specific, as Mustafa and I have both said, that it's very specific about leading a DevOps cultural transformation, and it really is about new and innovative ways to organize and manage IT. It is important to recognize, though, that DevOps Foundation certification is a prerequisite for sitting the DevOps Leader examination. So the course is built on the core concepts, the fundamental knowledge that is introduced in DevOps Foundation and amplifies it from a cultural and leadership perspective. So why is this course important? You know, everything that you read about DevOps, every presentation, every blog, every article emphasizes the fact that DevOps at its heart is a cultural movement. It is about changing the way people think. It's about changing the way people interact. It's about changing the way people behave. And it goes beyond, you know, the tagline of communicate and collaborate to really looking at how is IT organized, how are we embracing automation, how are we transforming to the next generation of software delivery and technology as an enabler. But in order to do cultural transformation, there are skills and approaches and practices that help lead people through that transformation. It's not necessarily organic. There are some tangible practices that have emerged, many of which have emerged from early adopter organizations that have led to very innovative thinking and transformational leadership. And if you've read the most recently published 2017 State of DevOps report from Puppet Labs, Electric Cloud, Dora, and others, transformational leadership is very much at the heart of what's helping high-performing organizations be successful. We know that leaders up, down, and across the IT organization really have to collaborate, and they have to have some common leadership skills and common approaches in order to break down those silos that have impaired IT from a faster flow in the past, and really work together to evolve the organization. And we also know at DevOps Institute that there have been very limited opportunities to learn about DevOps specific leadership. As I said early on, there are many, many leadership, really excellent leadership training opportunities out there, but this one is uniquely designed for a DevOps transformation. So is this course right for you? You know, I'm going to start by saying everybody's a leader. It doesn't matter where you sit in the organization, whether you're a senior manager, whether you're a practitioner, whether you're a developer, an operator, a QA person, or anywhere in between those. But, you know, specifically calling out roles, anyone that's leading a team, whether you're a scrum master, whether you're a team leader, whether you're a middle manager, senior manager, CIO, everybody needs to acquire the specific skills associated with transforming into a DevOps culture. If your organization is undertaking a DevOps initiative, then these leadership practices are critical to your success. We also like to think that business stakeholders that play a role in leading and guiding IT into the next generation of the business would certainly benefit from that as well. Anyone that's serving as a change agent, anyone that's an IT practitioner, we do know that there is a majority of attendees today that are also consultants, and consultants who will often guide organization into a new leadership paradigm should certainly pay attention to these practices. You know, as Mustafa said, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, how was the course built? Well, you know, one of the great things about DevOps and one of the frustrations about DevOps is that there isn't a single body of knowledge that we can go to, you know, chapter and verse to understand how to do this. You know, DevOps is very much built on a collective body of knowledge, and that collective body of knowledge embraces not only publications, but it embraces articles and conference presentations and thought leaders such as Mustafa. And so really kind of collecting and codifying some of those emerging practices. We actually stay away at DOI from the term best practice, but really starting to collect and make some sense out of those emerging practices, particularly as it relates to cultural transformation, is a part of our core mission. So there were many sources that were used to extract some real life best practices. Mustafa alluded to the fact that, you know, he's gone through over 50 transformations as part of his role at IBM. He went through the internal transformation of IBM as well. And remember, transformations don't end. They're a journey that really don't have a finish line. And so observing organizations that have really taken a very creative approach have been instilled into this course as well. But, you know, this course is designed to teach the key differences between traditional IT and DevOps IT and how leaders can help guide teams, suppliers, business stakeholders through that transformation as well. You know, and I always like to say, you know, I understand the concept of organizational change management, but culture isn't something you can surgically remove and then surgically attach a new culture to. So really looking at the diverse amount of input that can be used to build a leadership course, I think is one of the great assets that have been built into this course by Mustafa, really looking at not just a one world view, but looking at a multidimensional approach to leadership. And I think the attendees and the trainers and consultants who work with this course will recognize that right away. So again, a little bit about the collective body of knowledge. This is just a sampling of the most prominent, well-known entries into the collective body of knowledge. There isn't a formal you know, list or categories of the CBOC, but it's important to recognize that it goes beyond just books, right? There are great books out there like the Phoenix Project and the DevOps Handbook and Jez Humble's Continuous Delivery book, among others. But there's also a lot of knowledge that's embedded in presentations and blog articles, sites like DevOps.com. And so we've really been looking at all of that as we're building these practitioner courses. And that's part of our role at DevOps Institute, is to attend a lot of conferences, to read a lot of articles, to really become familiar with these books and pay attention to what's emerging in the wild as far as practices that are delivering value. So what you will learn in this course, and I'll let Mustafa tell us a little bit about the magic equation in a little bit, but the course has been wrapped around something called the magic equation, and that really helps to solidify or provide some type of an umbrella around leadership capabilities. It does talk a lot about the difference between DevOps leadership and traditional IT leadership, and how to approach leading people. Remember, this is all about leading people differently. Looks at organizational design principles. As Mustafa said, I think also at the heart of this is value stream mapping. Value stream mapping has emerged as a core competency and a critical success factor for DevOps, where we help teams understand from idea to realization how that value stream is built, what role every team and every tool provides as part of that value stream, and most importantly, looks for waste and opportunities to overcome constraints. Certainly looks at the squad model. The Spotify squad model has emerged as an interesting way to reorganize IT, some techniques for managing cultural change, and then you know, if you're going to be a leader, particularly in a DevOps space where automation is such a key member of the team, the course also does look at popular tools and practices and how to embed those and integrate those into a leadership model. And then, of course, like all good practitioner courses, we're going to wrap up with some really good tips for getting started. The course will be available July, which, by the way, starts on Saturday. So by mid-July, we're starting to prepare our registered education partners and disseminating the materials to them. And then each of the individual registered education partners will publish public and other schedules for when they'll actually deliver the courses. So it will start to become available over the course of the summer. And we do encourage you to go to the DevOpsInstitute.com website and find your registered education partner and review their schedules, and they'll be publishing those very shortly. And of course, you know, as Manny said, DevOps Leader is one of our DevOps Practitioner competency courses. You know, part of DOI's strategy in building and introducing new certifications is to look at the emerging competencies that are becoming critical in DevOps, really looking at how do we transform people from, you know, particular specialists or what we call I-shaped people into more multidimensional competency-based. So each of the practitioner courses is competency-based. We're not looking at experts or masters, really looking at what are these new skills that are also emerging as part of DevOps practices. So DevOps test engineering was released a few months ago and is in active production. DevOps Leader, we know that leadership is a critical skill. Continuous delivery architecture is going to be coming out in the next coming weeks as well, followed on by DevSecOps for security, and then later this year, site reliability engineering. So if you're interested in learning more and want to build on your leadership skills, we encourage you to take a look at these courses. And of course, for those on the service management side, Agile Service Management and Agile Process Owner are already in production and help to instill agility into existing ITSM processes. So hopefully that gives everybody a bit of an overview regarding the DevOps Leader course, but more importantly, the need and the value of DevOps specific leadership skills. So what we want to do for the rest of the time that we have together is really have a very interactive question and answer period. So I'm going to start and ask Mustafa a couple of questions, and please, if you have questions, please type those in, and then Manny will ask those of Mustafa as well. So let me start by asking Mustafa, what do you think the biggest challenges that are facing leaders today when trying to introduce a DevOps adoption program?
That's a great question. I think we are in IT challenge from multiple dimensions. Number one is there's just so much information out there, and some of it is actually exactly contradictory. And I think trying to wade through that information and trying to figure that out is hard. So number one is just broad information. So even as a leader, if you are looking to make changes, you just don't know what change to make and how to make that change. So that's first. Second, I think is because this is a new way of looking at IT, because this requires a new mindset, so to speak, it requires a new normal. The tools or the frameworks in which you start evaluating your quality of service is different, and I think some of the leaders struggle with that because, you know, making a change, or the best way to make a change in my experience has been based on real data. And if you just say I'm going to automate this activity, that doesn't really tell you if that's actually going to help you with reducing cycle time or not. So having a grasp on those types of tools and frameworks to actually start saying, you know, am I doing the right thing? Am I doing the right way? Is important. And then and then the third piece of this is actually how do you gain acceptance of that change within the organization, or how do you sell that change? How do you manage that change? I think all of those three things are really big challenges for a lot of the CIOs that I talk to, and that I think is one of the biggest impediments of making changes or having a DevOps success in the organization.
And you know, it's funny, Mustafa, because speaking specifically to the first bullet, you're right. I mean, there's just so much information about DevOps, some of which is contrary, and you know, certainly there'll be. I think we're going to open up dialogues about, you know, what about this approach or what about this approach, and it can be overwhelming. And so it's kind of a blessing and a curse that there isn't a single body of knowledge around DevOps. I mean, the DevOps Handbook has done a great job codifying many of the practices. Jez's book, Continuous Delivery, was a really great starting point. But the practices are emerging day to day, and the dialogue and discussion is really very, very healthy. How do you avoid having organizations kind of go through framework fatigue, right? ITIL, Agile, Lean, DevOps, I mean, it can make your head explode. So how do leaders do that? How do they avoid, having DevOps being perceived as the flavor of the year or the new buzzword, and start to have their practitioners just go through enormous framework fatigue?
Yeah, I think having a framework without actually having a key, what I would call a business imperative, is important. So the reason why we go through framework fatigue is simply because there is no key business imperative that we're trying to achieve. And if you can link a business objective, then you can actually stabilize, or you can focus on the framework. And for example, if the business is really looking for speed, which is what DevOps is all about, then you can actually then focus on the right framework to help you do that speed, and you can avoid everything else. And that allows you to get focused. And I think that is one of the things that we try to do with our clients, is say, listen, I know there's a lot of frameworks out there, but if you're really looking for improving speed, these are the 3 frameworks that you need to focus on, and forget the rest. And we try to show that in the course as well, as to what are the different frameworks and what are the frameworks that we believe are the most important when it comes to DevOps success.
Who do you think the biggest resistors are?
That's a great question. I think you actually have resistance at all 3 levels, at different levels. So, you might have a senior executive who is not convinced of the benefits of DevOps. And that is a very challenging situation, because that means that either the business has not recognized the value, or the executive has not recognized the value, and that's why they're not actually pushing forward the DevOps agenda. So you have that. On the opposite end of the scale, you have practitioners and subject matter experts who refuse to learn new ways of doing it. And maybe they've been doing the same thing for so long that they really don't want to change, or they find it to be too challenging, or they could just not care and say, you know what, I don't really want to do anything different. And then you actually have the problem in the middle. And I think the middle management has a real challenge, because they might want to change, but they don't know how to change. Or they want to change, but they know that they have to still deliver to the commitments that they've made to senior executives. And so how do you make things without breaking things? Or how do you make a change without breaking things? And I think for them, that is a huge challenge. So you find resistance at all different levels depending on where you are. You might actually have an executive who's ready to go, but if his or her team at the middle management or subject matter experts don't want to change, nothing's going to happen. And vice versa, you might have somebody in the middle who wants to make the change, but then can't convince the other 2 at the spectrum to change. So it really is, you'll find resistance at all 3 levels.
How do you convert then resistors into change agents?
Perfect. And I'm glad you asked that, because that is where you have to actually take a look at the different roles and figure out what are the different priorities. And you know that for the executive, the priority is going to be business results. And so there's a section in this course in which we talk about how do you actually build a business case and how do you show the business results. You know, from a practitioner subject matter expertise perspective, there are certain skill sets that you need to learn. And so there's a section in this course that tells you what are the different tools and competencies that you need to build at the subject matter level, subject matter expert level. And then, of course, from the middle management perspective, where this bulk of this course is focused on, is how do you actually go about managing that change? How do you define that new operating model? How do you manage that new operating model? And how do you go from current state to future state?
Yeah, and it's kind of interesting, because I think part of being a really good leader is to recognize and respect the emotional aspects of it, right? Where,
Yeah.
Middle managers are trying to figure out where do they fit, and if we're breaking down silos, who do they manage?
Yep.
And, and I know there's some really key elements that address that in this course. And then we know, practitioners hear terms like no ops and, hear no job. And, the IT practitioners across the board hear automation and afraid they're going to be automated out of their expertise. And so I think, a big part of what's addressed in this course, but particularly an important skill for leaders, is to recognize the human element of it.
Yeah, and to add to that is that what this course also gives gives the students a way to actually effectively talk about DevOps with confidence. A lot of the time, people who want to change just don't know what are the right, well, how to actually go about making that change. How do you go and talk to an executive in a language that they understand to go ahead and invest in a DevOps transformation? Or how do you go and talk to your direct reports and tell them about a different way of doing it? So we spend a fair amount of time in this course about not just the best practices and the tools and the process, but we also talk a lot about organization constructs, because all of those things, what they ultimately do is give the leader the confidence, the ammunition, and the tools to go ahead and make them more effective. Does that help? Yeah?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So before we turn it over to questions that I'm sure Manny's collecting right now, tell us a little bit about the magic equation.
I wish I had actually developed the magic equation, but I have not, but I have used it frequently. So the magic equation was actually developed by GE. I used to work for GE a long time ago. And what GE realized was that for any transformation, you actually need to be successful in two dimensions. The first dimension is the quality of solution. And when I say quality of solution, I'm not talking about the technical solution, I'm just talking about solution in general. So from a DevOps context, it's about people, process, and technology. But even if you get the quality of solution right, let's say it's 100%, your transformation will still fail because you haven't worked on the other dimension, which is what I call the acceptance dimension. So you have to have a quality of solution, but you also have the population who you're going to give the solution to accept that solution. And accepting that solution requires all the things, Jayne, that we were just talking about, is how do you get through different layers of resistance, and how do you go from managing change. And so you need to have both of those dimensions, so to speak. And you'll almost find that sometimes the quality of solution, where most people focus on as to what tools do I get, what does my pipeline look like, is really not the biggest challenge. It's usually the acceptance piece. And so what we've built this course around is what I would call the magic equation, which just says DevOps success equals Q, which is quality of solution, and we kind of talk about all the different dimensions of the quality of solution, times A, which is acceptance, and we talk about how do you go about gaining that acceptance. And Jayne mentioned about how do you manage conflict, how do you manage change. All of those parts are actually built around, or the course has been built around this equation.
And I'm happy to share that even at the outset of the course, when the magic equation is introduced, it kind of preludes how the magic equation really ties into the subsequent sections and modules. So
it really is the umbrella that kind of holds the course together, so to speak, right? Because the entire course is based on that, and this is something that we've been doing this at IBM for quite some time. So
it's truly magical. Okay, so on that note, Manny, have you been collecting questions for us?
Hello, yes, I have. Sorry about that. I've got several questions here to start off with, and the first one, Jayne can probably answer this one pretty quickly. Is it mandatory to go to a reps class for training? Asking about self-study materials for the examination.
No, it is required that you attend a class. It's also required that you achieve DevOps Foundation certification. Keep in mind that leadership, you can read every book on leadership, you could listen to every presentation about leadership, but leadership is a practical experience. So while there is a certification exam that, that tests your knowledge of the practices that are introduced in this course, the biggest value you get out of an experience like this is interaction with either your colleagues, if it's an internal class, or interaction with people that are in the same place that you are in a public environment. So, reading the course materials, self-studying really wouldn't give you, as an individual leader, the benefit that you would get out of a class. So you are required to attend the class, and you are also required to have DevOps Foundation certification in order to sit the DevOps Leader certification exam.
Great, great. And Mustafa Shikar is asking if they're in the course or maybe offered DevOps path type materials for an enterprise.
So the test's been written from an enterprise perspective, right? Fortunately, unfortunately, how you want to look at it, most of my experience, in fact, close to 100% of my experience is with large enterprises. So a lot of the tools, frameworks, methodologies, and constructs are all based on enterprise transformation.
Okay, great. Great, thank you for that answer. And Claire is asking, are there leadership lessons in this course for people who wouldn't class themselves as DevOps, such as ITSM people?
Definitely. The goal is, if you go back to this first one of few slides I put together, the goal is not just to help people who want to do DevOps transformation, which I think is table stakes for this course, but it's also to help people understand the new way of looking at IT, which is very important when you're thinking about from an ITSM perspective how that's different. How do you start designing the new IT operating model? It may not be 100% DevOps, but that's okay. So I think this is definitely relevant to other practitioners as well.
Okay, great. And Daniel is asking, how do you get a leader, not a manager, but a leader, to take 16 hours of their time to learn the contents of this much needed knowledge?
That's a great question. My question to you is more about how can you not take 16 hours? In fact, if you want to do this right, being a DevOps leader is going to take you more than 16 hours. One of the mandatory requirements that I have for my service line is that I actually take every practitioner who joins IBM a 3-week boot camp on basically everything that has to do with DevOps. And you can say, well, why do you spend that much time? Because you're basically losing revenue. The key is that the 3-week boot camp, it simply builds on the foundation to make sure that they're successful. And so I rather invest 3 weeks, lose their revenue, so that they can actually go and be successful for a client. So Daniel, I think that's a great question, but I think it's almost at the point, we are almost at the point at which that this is actually building your own competency. So if a leader does not recognize that spending 16 minutes, 16 hours on themselves is worth it, then maybe they're not a DevOps.
Well, and let me jump in on that because I think you're absolutely right. It's not a question of whether you should, it's a question of how can you not. Whether you call it DevOps or you call it ITSM or you call it Agile, call it IT. Leading IT today, and some of us, like me, have been in IT a long time, and we're pretty embedded in the way that we have done it in the past. But today's IT organization, whether you call it DevOps or you're deploying 50 times a day or 50 times a year, leading today's DevOps, leading today's IT professional, leading today's IT organization does require a fresh approach. And whether you're going to set up a Spotify squad model or you're not, whether you do it now or you do it in a year or somebody replaces you who is doing it, you know, who has these competencies and understands this new mindset and has a paradigm shift and understands that IT does require a cultural transformation as well as an automation increase. You know, it's do it now, do it later, or somebody else who has this type of skill will end up sitting in that seat.
Great answers. Got a question from the library. How do you pitch this to an organization such as at the scale of like IBM for this course?
How do you pitch the DevOps Foundation or this course to somebody like IBM? Is that correct, Penny?
That is correct.
Okay. Well, so trust me, it's not easy. When IBM, it becomes a lot easier to pitch the course when the executives have realized that DevOps represents a new operating model. So if in our case in IBM, when IBM started its transformation journey almost 5 years ago, having somebody take the DevOps course always meant take a technical course. So maybe you can learn Chef, maybe you can learn Puppet, those kind of things. But leadership courses are very hard simply because our leaders didn't see value. But once you actually have an organization who says, I want to do DevOps, this course becomes almost mandatory because it comes back to the magic equation, right? You can build a great solution and build a great pipeline, but if you actually don't have acceptance from your folks about how to manage that pipeline, how to use that pipeline, you're not going to be successful. And leaders very quickly recognize it. So it has to be, you know, this course is going to appeal to people who are saying, I want to do DevOps, or how do I do DevOps? I'm just starting the journey. If you actually have an executive that says, I want nothing to do with DevOps, then this course is not going to appeal to them. But in my opinion, what I see trends in the marketplace is more and more industries and more companies from even 2 years ago are now saying, you know what, DevOps is not a fad. It's real because our business is changing. We're getting the so-called Uber effect, so to speak, and so we need to do things differently in IT. And by the way, well, part of the course, you know, coming back to the earlier question in which you asked about the enterprise, part of this course also helps you navigate what parts of the enterprise you change and you don't change. Because a lot of people think that, well, everything has to go to DevOps, and that is not true. So for trying to figure out where you focus DevOps transformation and where you not focus DevOps transformation is just as important. And that is one of the key design principles that we kind of talk about. I think that's in module 3 or 4. So I hope that answers your question.
Great, thank you, Mustafa. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was going to chime in and say, you know, I think one of the great ways to pitch is leadership retreats. You know, CIOs, senior management often do leadership retreats with their teams, and this is a great course to bring into that type of a leadership retreat.
Great, thank you, Jayne. And Mustafa, I'm going to combine two questions here. They're similar, but how much of a technical functional expertise is needed for DevOps Leader, and are tool certifications important for a DevOps leader?
I would say none, in fact. So this course is very much focused on leadership as opposed to technical competence. And when I talk about leadership, I'm talking about managing people, looking at organizations, looking at how do you do things differently. It really is not about a tool perspective. We talk about tools, but I think in reality, the tools maybe make up maybe 5% of the content that is in here. So and to answer both those questions, you actually don't need any certification whatsoever. You have to be familiar with the tool so you can actually talk about it, but you don't have to be actually have working knowledge of those tools. And it's by design, by the way. And if you look at our experience with transformation, putting tools in and thinking that just tools is going to help you do DevOps never works. Tools makes up less than, I would say, 5% of your solution. Tools is the easy part.
Great, thank you.
The other 95%, that's the hard part.
Right. So to follow that up, what would be the traits of a successful DevOps leader?
Oh, that's a great question. You know, for the first thing is to be open to change. And I know it sounds weird, but a lot of DevOps leadership is unlearning what you've learned. And that requires an open mind. So, and I mentioned this earlier, we've kind of grown up in this mindset of cost and quality. And that's been ingrained in us so deeply that everything that we look at is from that cost and quality lens. And so part of it is being open to change and open to saying the way I did things yesterday may not be the best way to do things. And so constantly being open to change is part of it. Second of it is being able to be comfortable with experimentation and failure. A lot of the DevOps is going to be 2 steps forward, 1 step back. And so you will have to be okay with saying, I'm going to try this, I'm going to see if it works, and from there I'm going to move forward, and if it doesn't work, I'm going to be okay with it. You know, we in IT have put all these processes together. It's all because we want to avoid failure. And DevOps talks about the complete opposite. DevOps talks about fail early, fail fast. We in IT try to do fail never, and if you do fail, push the failure as far down the road as you can, right? And the third one is also being comfortable with change management. You know, we're great technologists in IT, but we're not comfortable with managing change, which takes which has a lot to do with emotional intelligence. And so this one kind of talks about the practical tools that you can use to actually help you become a great change agent.
Great answers there, Mustafa. Excellent. And Jayne, we've got a couple of course-related questions here as to virtual and online versus live classes with an instructor, and costs and PDUs. Can you answer to some of that?
So specifically, the individual reps have the flexibility in terms of whether they're going to deliver the course in the classroom or through a virtual classroom. Online training has not yet been introduced by any of the reps, but I would expect that that will be available in the future. Costs, again, are each individual rep and each individual region will establish their own, so there is not a single cost. Exams must be ordered through the rep, so you cannot purchase the exam on your own because of the requirement to attend a class. Did that cover everything that was in that, Manny?
The only other thing was the PDUs.
Oh, PDUs. If you are a project management professional or an individual that requires continuing education units, again, your registered education partner can attest, or if they're, for example, a PMI registered education partner, but it would be equivalent to 16 hours. So however, whether you're PMP and you need 16 PDUs, or you have any of the other qualifications that require continuing education units, verified continuing education units, again, you have to match that according to your qualification, but it is 16 hours.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. And it looks like we have maybe one last question here. Does this course incorporate any leadership skills for interactions to help push cultures like DICS, VIA, and leadership presencing?
I'm sorry, Manny, could you say that again? Does this course have?
Yeah, any leadership skills for interactions to help push cultures like looks like DISC/VIA and leadership presencing?
You know what? I'm not. Did you say DIA? DIA?
Yeah, DISC. DI.
So
I'm not familiar with.
Yeah, I'm familiar with DISC. Let me take this and then Mustafa add on. So, you know, as I said at the very beginning, there are some really sound leadership practices, and there are instruments such as the DISC instrument, Myers-Briggs. There are conflict management instruments that have been a part of traditional leadership training. And we certainly encourage leaders to continue their learning about those types of topics and approaches. For this course, you know, as I said at the very beginning of the hour, Mustafa took a very innovative and fresh approach, part of which assumes that a leader either has those skills, is familiar with those skills, will attain those skills, but core broad-based leadership skills are not embedded into this course. Again, there's lots of adjuncts that are available, very broadly available in publications, training, and otherwise. This course is very, very specifically focused on an IT operating model that is evolutionary as much as, I wouldn't call it revolutionary, I would call it more evolutionary, but as Mustafa said, is about the openness to change management and managing IT in a different way. So it's not specifically addressed. It is, again, much more IT specific, but there are some very well-respected and well-known practices that are introduced, like Westrom's flow of information is embedded into that. So it doesn't really look at the instrument levels like DISC or Myers-Briggs, but it does very much look at things that are very IT specific. Mustafa, is there anything else you wanted to build on that?
No, I think you're right. I'm sorry, I was not familiar with the framework that you're talking about. But yes, the course is, as Jayne said, geared towards leaders or people who are leaders who have the basic management expertise, so to speak. And this is really about upskilling and uptooling and relearning, unlearning and relearning some new things.
Great, fantastic. So we're nearing the 1 hour mark here. So I believe we have the last question that has been asked and answered. So at this time, I think we thank everybody for having attended. We are next month having an Ask the Author for Continuous Delivery Architecture. I believe that's July 25th. Is that correct, Jayne?
It is. I have the slide up on my screen.
Great. Oh, great. I didn't see that. Yep, the 25th. And I have chatted in the link if you haven't already seen that, so you can progress right to the page and sign up for that one. And any closing words from Jayne or Mustafa at this point?
So first of all, I want to thank Mustafa not just for speaking so eloquently and so passionately today at our webinar, but for all of the effort and insight and thought leadership that's gone into this course. I hope that those that are on the webinar today and those that they work with and those that they know really spread the word about the fact that DevOps leadership is a unique competency and that there are some very sound practices that will assist organizations in creating that new mindset and that new paradigm. So really want to thank Mustafa for his innovation and really bringing that to the masses through this course. I also want to thank...
Jayne, you're setting the bar too high. You got to lower it.
No, I told you, really. The expectation is really high. For those of you who might be attending Jenkins World, this course will be delivered at Jenkins World in partnership with CloudBees and the Jenkins World conference team. So if you're looking for an opportunity to take the class, it is one of the rare opportunities that DevOps Institute takes to partner with some conferences in order to be able to bring some of this knowledge forward. In addition to that, please reach out to your registered education partner. If you don't have a registered education partner, please visit our website. And we now have 80 partners in 25 countries. So if you don't have a partner, please go and search our directory and find one. We know that the partners are very, very excited about this course in particular, and really hope that everybody will take advantage of learning those new skills.
Great, fantastic.
Perfect. And if I may add, like Jayne said, I know we joke about it, but we did design this course differently than most of leadership training, simply because we wanted to make sure that we gave you the right tools to become successful. So please, when you get a chance, take a look at us. You know, if you want, connect with me on LinkedIn. It's amazing. In the last few days since the webinars, a lot of people have been connecting me on LinkedIn to just kind of get connected, to learn about a course. I know Daniel sent me an email last night about how excited it is. So I want to hear back from you guys about what you think about the webinar. When you take the course, tell me what you think about the course. We're always looking to make it better. And also, part of our outreach is I send out a monthly newsletter on what's going on in DevOps. If that is something that you're interested in, connect with me on LinkedIn, send me your email. I'll be happy to put you on the distribution list. And this really is about more, think about it as a continuous education in addition to this course as to what else is going on in DevOps and how you can actually become a better leader. So thank you so much for attending. We do appreciate it.
Great. Thank you, Mustafa. Thank you, Jayne. And
Thank you.
I'm sorry?
I said thank you, Manny.
Thank you, me. All right. Great. This concludes the webinar for today. Thanks for attending, everyone, and we will see you next month. Thank you.